How's it going, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to episode 2 of The Tim Show. And in today's episode, I am so excited to be talking about probably my absolute favorite anime series of all time, but it actually originated as a light novel series. And I've been wanting to talk about this series for a very long time now, but I wanted to find the right way to do it. And I think by talking about the individual light novels will be the easiest step to do so. So before I really get into this episode, I do want to issue a word of warning. If none of you have watched the anime or have read Sword Art Online, there are going to be some spoilers within all of my little reviews, descriptions of me going over each and every single one of these books. I think I may just call it a review. I mean, I don't know if I'll give it a grade. I think I'll just kind of like go over like the book itself. But I guess it's like, yeah, I guess it's more of like a review. So yeah, once again, if you guys have not seen or read Sword Art Online, there will be spoilers ahead. And I encourage you guys, if you are interested about this series, to go check it out or read it. It's fantastic. But yes, I will be talking about spoilers in this series. So if you guys do not want to know anything about this series at all, I thank you guys for watching the little bit of this podcast already. Maybe come back after you have read the first book, because that's what I'm going to be talking about. Today I'm going to be talking about the very first book in the series. So if you want to stop this podcast, maybe go out and read the first book, then come back, I welcome it. But for those of you that just tuned in just for a little bit, I thank you guys so much. Like the video, comment down below if there's any other stuff that you want me to look at, and I'll talk about it. But without further ado, I'm ready to talk about this. Sword Art Online. Before I really get into, talking about the book and whatnot, and the series itself, I want to talk about how did I get into this series. Growing up, I never really did watch a lot of anime. I wasn't too big on anime. I had seen bits and pieces of Dragon Ball Z, but I know for my older brother and I, we watched a lot of Pokemon, and we watched a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! But we never really ventured into anything else like that. And from growing up and seeing, the animation styles and learning so much about it, I mean, I wanted to get into different animes, and there are so many others out there that I didn't know which one to choose. So I have a really good friend of mine who she was trying to get me to just watch, all these really cool animes. And one day, in the summer, she texted me saying, "Hey, I think I found an anime that I think you would like." I'm like, "Oh, what is it?" It's called Sword Art Online. It's a series about these characters diving into a virtual world of video games and so on and so forth. And the first season is available on Netflix, and it has English dub. By the way, I do prefer my anime with English dub, I really do, but because Sword Art Online is my favorite, I do make an exception for subs. So anyway, she's like, it has the English dub, why don't you check it out? I watched the first episode of that show, and I binged the entire first season. I binged the first half of it that night, and then the rest of season 1 the next day, and I immediately jumped to the second season of the show. And I watched it with subtitles because they didn't have the English stuff for that on Netflix yet. So I watched that entire second season with subtitles, and I didn't even care. I loved it so much, and I love this. It's not just about me being loving video games and having these characters go into video games. It's like it has a really great story to it, and there's actually a lot of things in this series that is very relatable, especially with how the author depicts an average gamer. And that's something that I'm gonna actually go into in a minute. But I just want to say that there are a lot of things that I can relate to this series, and a lot of stuff that I can relate with its characters. And I love how the main premise of this series is all about, battling the odds and coming together as friends, despite dire situations. And that's what I love so much about the series. And something I'll go over even more when I talk about each and every single one of these books. So I think without further ado, I think it's time that we get started. Because I'm ready. I've been waiting for this for a long time. Volume 1 of Sword Art Online Aincrad. Aincrad being this first novel takes place in its first big story arc, which is the Aincrad arc, which in this case is about 2 books worth. This first book tells basically the start to finish of the Aincrad arc. And in the next book we look at, we'll go back into the world of Aincrad, but it'll kind of be some side stories that took place within the world that the author doesn't really put into this first book because he really just wants to focus on the major stuff. But one thing I want to do when I talk about each one of these books is I want to start by reading the back of the book. It's a quick little description about what to expect and what the book's about, so that way we can really get into this. So I'm going to go ahead and start with that. In the year 2022, gamers rejoice as Sword Art Online, a VR MMORPG, virtual reality, massively multiplayer online role-playing game like no other debuts, allowing players to take full advantage of the ultimate in-gaming technology, Nerve Gear, a system that allows users to completely immerse themselves in a wholly realistic gaming experience. But when the game goes live, the elation of the players quickly turns to horror as they discover that, for all its amazing features, SAO is missing one of the most basic functions of any MMORPG, a logout button. Now trapped in the virtual world of Aincrad, their bodies held captive by Nerve Gear in the real world, users are issued a chilling ultimatum: conquer all 100 floors of Aincrad to regain your freedom. But in the warped world of SAO, game over means certain death, both virtual and real. And this starts the beginning of the very first story arc for this series, Sword Art Online Aincrad Volume 1. Now, as it says in the back of the book, in the time of 2022, gaming developers have created a new type of gaming system called the Nerve Gear, which is essentially like a helmet that you put on your head. And you turn it on, and your body goes to sleep, while your mind is in the world of the video game. And in this story, we follow a character named Kirito. Kirito is pretty much, at the time he's 14 years old, I should probably stress that. He's 14 years old, and he is essentially like most average, teenagers growing up around the world. And especially from, the book doesn't really show a little bit of his life, before the game starts. The book starts with him already in the game, talking about his experiences before this big tragic thing that is going to happen. And I guess for when I'm talking about these book reviews, I will be mentioning a little bit of the anime, because the anime adds just a little bit of more clarity to certain characters. It's not a lot, though. You still get what you get within the books. And I would like to stress that out. Like, the books and the anime, they are exactly the same. No detail is left behind, and if it is, it's really small. And one thing that the very first episode of the anime does is that we get to see, before Kirito dives into the world of Sword Art Online, or the world of Aincrad, I should say, he's sitting in his bedroom, reading a gaming magazine about the Nerve Gear. And, he's got no cell phone, he's not like getting emails from anybody. His little sister is off to school. And when he's getting ready to go dive into the world, he looks out his window and it's a cloudy day in Japan. And he just has this expression on his face that you just know from just watching so much television, anime, and whatever, that he is essentially a loner. He does not go out and hang out with anybody. And when he puts on the Nerve Gear and he's laying in his bed and he's getting ready to dive into this game, he has a hint of a smile. That lets me know that this character likes playing video games more than enjoying his time in the real world. And essentially that is kind of true for most people in the world. We prefer to play video games because, why? They make us happy. And, there are so many different reasons why that happens. So Kirito ends up logging into Aincrad, and he's enjoying his first day as Sword Art Online launches. And I'm sure, like most of us gamers out there, when a game launches and it's that first day, we're all going absolutely crazy, and we're just loving the heck out of it. It is so cool. And I love that experience. And upon Kirito diving into this world, he ends up meeting his first friend in the series, known as Klein, who's a couple years older than him. I think he's actually in his early 20s at the start of this series. And Kirito is kind of helping Klein get used to the game because Kirito was a beta tester for Sword Art Online before it launched. So he kind of already knows the ins and outs of this game. So he decides to help out Klein a little bit. And, they're having a good time. Klein's thanking him for all the help he gave him. And Klein notices when he wants to go and, because he's getting hungry and he wants to go back home so he can have a pizza, that when he goes to try and log out, the logout button is not there. And Kirito tries to tell him, like, oh, no, you just got to look at your menu. But then he notices that's missing too. And once these two characters notice that the logout button is gone, they both get teleported to the central plaza of the very first level in this world. And they're in a very chilling entrance, especially just from reading the book and watching the anime. They are greeted by the game's developer, who is known as Akihiko Kayaba. And he tells the players that, yes, the logout button is missing, but it is an essential part to this game. And basically, he just lays it out in front of all these characters. And I should stress, there are over 10,000 people logged into this game. And if you die in the game, the Nerve Gear will send it sends a signal and it fries your brain. So if you die in the game, you die in real life. And he explains that the developer Kayaba says that his ultimate goal was to control a world of his very own. And that having this feature where if you die in the game, you die in real life, that was essential to his plan. And all the gamers out there, they feel like it's absolute BS. They don't believe him, but it ultimately becomes true. And apparently some of the players didn't, really think about the warning that before only like a few hours into the game, over 200 people have already died in the game. And another thing that this series does and what the author does that, again, just kind of like is we can relate to is like, and I say this to all the gamers out there. When you're playing a game, we all create our own avatars because we want to like create some cool looking character that we can play throughout the game. We all do it. So in the beginning of the book Kirito and Klein make custom avatars. They are not the people that, I should say for Kirito at this point, if you're looking at my thumbnail right now, that picture of Kirito, that's what he looks like in real life. But in the beginning of the book, he looks completely different because he made his own avatar. So Kayaba says that he has given all the players a special little present in their inventory, and it's a small little mirror. And when the players look at the mirror, they then turn into their actual selves. So there are like, the guys that try to look like really cool with like the long hair, and then, the mirror flashes and, they have short hair. They look like their normal selves. Or again, they kind of do this joke where, some guys will pretend to be like, the girl, and then they joke around in the book that, wait, you're not a girl, you're a guy, and then whatnot. And, because we like to create different avatars. And I love that little joke with it. And it's so funny. And I like how they paid attention to detail about that. So after Kirito and Klein are looking at the mirror and they turn into like their actual selves, they begin wondering why do we look like we do in real life? Well, like I said, the Nerve Gear is like a helmet, and it has a scanner all around the system, so that way it can see what you look like. And players have to put in the information about their body, height, and weight and whatnot. So now their physical appearance also matches their real life bodies. And Kayaba tells them that the only way to clear the game is that they have to conquer all 100 floors of this ginormous castle, because all these players are in this big towering castle, but the castle has each has individual floors, and the floors, it can look like you're outside, but there's actually like a tower that will take you to the next like open world or level. So the players they have to get to the 100th floor and beat the final boss, but each floor has its own boss. So they essentially have to battle 100 tough bosses and the final boss in order to clear the game. And at that time that's pretty crazy, because one thing that Klein mentions at the beginning of the story is that the people who got to beta test the game, they only made it to floor 8, and the castle has 100 floors, so they think it's impossible. And with that, Kayaba wishes the players good luck, and thus begins this big nightmare known as Sword Art Online. And from that point on, in this first book, we don't really follow Kirito as he progresses through each and every single floor of this castle. The book kind of jumps around, but I have to admit, it does it in a way that still feels like we're still getting a lot of background about these characters, and it doesn't feel weird. And something of what the author likes to do is the author likes to release different books that have side stories about, characters going through other points throughout, the worlds that they're in, so we can get a little bit more background on them. And the second book that I'll be looking at next time is one of those examples. But for this main book right here, we're really just kind of given the big general story of Kirito, starting from the beginning of Aincrad, getting into the end. And along the way, Kirito decides to play the game solo. Even though he's in an MMORPG, people end up teaming up with partners and whatnot to clear a game, because that's what people do in those types of video games. But Kirito feels that he's much better playing the game solo, because one, he wants to get back to his parents and his sister more than anything, but he also doesn't want to have anyone die being in his party. He's kind of looking out for people, and that's just part of him being a loner, is that he just, he doesn't want to see people die because of him, and he thinks that by being a solo player, he can get as far as he needs to and not have to worry about, making friends and watching them die. Which, and again, in his situation, it makes sense. And after Kayaba tells them that, this whole grand message, he wants Klein to go with him because he kind of trusts Klein after their time of bonding. But then Klein says to Kirito, no, I've got some friends that are still in the plaza and they're freaking out. You can join us if you want, but Kirito just doesn't want to do that, so he leaves. And they kind of part ways there. And after that whole beginning of Kirito saying that he's going to conquer this game and get through all these challenges, we fast forward, and Kirito has been in Aincrad for over 2 years, and people are still trapped in this game. A lot of people have died, but we time jump to Kirito 2 years later, and we start to see some more things about him. We start to see that he's interacted with more people. He's still playing as a solo player, but we end up meeting one character that ends up becoming this grand, biggest important character in this series, and that is a character by the name of Asuna, which is also on the thumbnail, who is standing right next to Kirito on the left picture. And we kind of know right away that these characters, they have some history. They really do. And you can kind of tell that it's kind of like good friends, but also it could lead into some, type of boyfriend-girlfriend relationship. And we start to see how these two characters bond and how much they actually mean to one another. And that's another thing that I like with Kirito's arc, because we learn about him in this book that, again, Kirito's a loner. He's never had a girlfriend. He's never had like such great friends because he likes to keep to himself. And we really start to see him open up to other people. And there is a point in this story where Asuna just flat out says, like, you've never had a girlfriend before in your life, have you? And he just like, no, I mean, but I just prefer being solo. But we can tell that, the two of them have some feelings for one another, and we get to see how that progresses throughout this first book. and the two characters run across into some enemies. And I guess I should say this right now. I mean, I don't want to spoil the entire thing. I do want to leave some surprises, but I do want to give you guys a general synopsis of like what happens throughout the good majority of this book. So they run into some enemies, and you really get to see the relationship build up much more. And it's something that is handled very well. It's not something that feels forced. And again, there are other books in the series and the anime itself that really shows more of like them, meeting for like the first time and building off the relationship. But for this book, we only see the biggest stuff. And eventually that relationship ends up letting them wanting to get married. They get married in the game virtually. It hasn't happened in the real life, but they start to perform, they love each other. And there's nothing that they wouldn't do for one another. And as we get towards the end of the book, the characters have now completed 74 floors. They are now, I believe it's the 75th floor or, 74th. It's somewhere in the middle of the 70th floor. And as Asuna and Kirito reunite with Klein and a couple other friends that they've made along the book, they defeat one of the bosses, and they're on I believe they're on the 75th floor. And they realize themselves that the bosses are getting much stronger. They're getting a lot more powerful. And they're a lot more deadly than they have been. And they still have over 25 floors left to beat. And throughout this book, Kirito discovers something about a particular character and realizes that this character is actually Akihiko Kayaba. And Kayaba confesses this truth and says to Kirito that, I'll tell you what, if you can strike me down right now, I will let you and all the other players out and you will have cleared the game. But if you die, then you guys will just have to wait for me on the 100th floor of Aincrad, and you'll have to fight me then. Asuna and all of his other friends are telling him, it's not worth it, Kirito, don't risk it, it's alright. But Kirito realizes that he has the opportunity to end this game right now and set everyone free and make sure that no one has to endure this even longer. So he accepts Kayaba's challenge and ends up facing him. And in this challenge, Kirito is not winning. He's getting his butt kicked. All hope seems lost. Kayaba has damaged one of Kirito's swords and knocked the other one loose. So Kirito is now weaponless, and he is about to be struck down. And Asuna jumps in front of Kirito to save his life as Kayaba swings his sword and it strikes Asuna. And Asuna is believed to be dead after that. She fades away, and we think that she's gone. And I will admit, from seeing that the first time, I was actually like, oh, you gotta be kidding me. That's horrible. But apparently she died. And Kirito is just like, there's nothing left for him. Kayaba strikes him down, and Kirito fades away. And just something strange happens where all of the particles, because when a character dies in the game, like in a video game, like they disappear into pixels. All of Kirito's pixels come back to him, and he's back to life. He's kind of staticky, but he's still alive, and his eyes change from black to yellow, and he grabs Asuna's sword and strikes down Kayaba, saving everybody and ending this long nightmare. And I guess Asuna did the same thing, and she is actually still alive too. And they reunite one more time, and they have a conversation with Kayaba about, just why did you want to do this? And Kayaba doesn't really have an answer for him yet, but he knows that the only thing that he's been dreaming of his whole life is this castle. And he wants to discover more about why he decided to do what he did. And, discover, like, the new advancements that will eventually come to technology. And the book ends with Kirito and Asuna saying their goodbyes to one another, that they promise that they're going to meet in real life and actually, date and become a couple and whatnot. And it's very sweet, and it's something that, people don't really do in video games a whole lot, but they reveal their real names. Like, Kirito is not his real name. Asuna is her real name, but her full name is Asuna Yuki, and Kirito's is Kazuto Kirigaya. And with that, Kirito starts crying. He apologizes that he couldn't save her, but Asuna tells him that it's okay. You did what you did. I still love you. They hug each other, and then the world of Aincrad fades away, and the game has been cleared. And then we end with Kirito waking up in the hospital, remembering Asuna, and now starting his next journey to go and find her. And that is essentially the first novel in the Sword Art Online series, and probably the biggest stuff to happen in this Aincrad arc. Now, since I'm only going to be talking about the book here, I don't want to, because the anime has some extra stuff too, but I guess just in terms of the book, this was a really good story. It's a story that I can relate to because, being in video games, I understand some of the logic that goes into this, but it's also a great action-packed story, and it's a love story. But I think it's handled in a way where it doesn't feel like, okay, let's move on. Like, it's actually genuinely sweet, and I do really care about these characters. And I think for the episodes that are covered in this first book, you really see more emotion with these characters, and the animation looks absolutely beautiful. And this book is a great start to what this series later goes on to be, because as of right now, in Japan, there's over 20 novels of this series, but in the United States, we kind of get them a little bit later. So we're currently at 19 with the 20th book coming out in the middle of this month, which I'm really excited for, and I will be picking that up very soon. But there is so much more story and so much depth to these characters that later books explore, and these characters go on such great adventures that it is just absolutely amazing. And I can't wait to talk more about this with you guys. I know that I say, well, you know what? I guess I'm just going to call this a review. I'm going to call these things reviews. If I were to review the first novel in the Sword Art Online series, I'm going to give it a solid, I'm going to give it an A+. There's not really, in this first book, there's not really ever a dull moment. There's something always going on with each and every chapter, and it is very exciting to read, whether it'd be action-packed, it'd be funny, going into like the love story with Kirito and Asuna. There's always something good going on in this book, and nothing feels like it's stalling, and it's awesome to read. So that's why I'm going to give this first novel an A+. And there are a couple of things that I kept out of this like overview and review of this, because I do want you guys to kind of be surprised on, how these certain things happen. Why do Kirito and Asuna end up getting married? I don't know. You'll have to read or watch the anime. But I do like to cover the main points and talk about, this whole story. But I do want to keep you guys with, some surprises in case you guys ever get interested in watching the series or reading it. And again, I would like to stress that it doesn't matter what you do. If you like reading, you can read the light novels or you can watch the anime, because the show follows the books 100%. You are not missing out on absolutely anything. So it all depends on what your taste is. But since I'm more specifically talking about the book, I have to talk about what the book only shows. And that pretty much wraps up book 1. When we meet again in the Sword Art Online series, we will still be in the world of the Aincrad arc, but we're actually going to be talking about different side stories that happened to Kirito and some of the additional people that he met throughout his time in Aincrad. And then we'll get into the next big story arc after that second book. So I just want to say thank you guys so much for listening. I hope you guys loved hearing about this series itself. I've been wanting to talk about this for a long time because it is my absolute favorite anime series of all time. It has introduced me to a lot of great music, a lot of great storytelling, and to this day, I'm still watching it. I'm in love with this current arc that they've been doing, and I'm so glad that the anime is now back. This current season has been delayed because of what's going on, and they wanted to get everything fixed up, and I'm so happy it's back, and I'm able to watch it. It's so cool. and I'm excited to go over more of this stuff later down the road. But I think I'm going to call it for this episode, so thank you guys so much for watching. I'm not sure if I'm going to record an episode tomorrow because I do have to work early in the morning tomorrow and I may be out of energy. But I will say, though, do not expect an episode tomorrow. I think I'm actually going to take a break tomorrow because I do have to work and I'm kind of going to want to rest up. But I will say, please expect a new episode on Sunday, August 9th. I haven't yet decided if I'm going to start with the next volume in the Sword Art Online series or if I'm going to be talking about something else. I haven't made up my mind yet, but do expect a new episode sometime on Sunday. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please like the video. Leave a comment if there's anything you guys maybe want me to cover in the future. I'll make note of it, and I'll talk about it, and let me know what you think, and let me see if there's anything that I can improve of the show going down the road. Thank you guys so much, and have a good day.